Mr. Grown?
So, I mean, this is like for fighters.
Okay. Again, welcome everybody. Thank you. Welcome new board members. So Mr. Steve, roll call.
Chairman Smith,
Here.
Mrs. Black,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Mr. Doherty,
Here.
Mr. Groan,
Here.
Mrs. Haddon,
Here.
Mrs. Jones,
Here.
Mr. King,
Here.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Here.
Mr. Slater,
Here.
Ms. Thomas,
Here.
Superintendent Dr. Robertson.
Okay, our first order of business with this new board is our election of our officers. So with that being said, I'll open the floor for nominations for board chair.
I want to put forth the nomination for Joe Smith to continue as chair.
Second.
Third.
I'm gonna give him one of these.
Suck up later.
Okay, any other nominations? Hearing none, seeing none. Mr. Steve?
I recommend that it be recorded as unanimous,
Second that.
unless there is someone who differs and wants to.
It's faster just do a roll call.
Okay,
You gotta do a roll.
Mrs. Black,
never mind.
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Groan,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Well, yeah.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. Thank you, peers. I'll continue to do the best I can. So, floor's open for nominations for vice chair. I hope I'm not inappropriate here, but I would like to recommend Ms. Jones to serve as
Second.
vice chair.
And I'll third that.
Who is the second, please?
Any others? Okay, roll call, Mr. Steve.
Mrs. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Groan,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. Okay, Ms. Jones, thank you. Thank you. So our other elected office is our legislative chair. Floor is open for nominations for legislative chair.
I'd like to nominate Ben Connor.
Second.
Any other nominations? Mr. Steve?
Mrs. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Groan,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Now, we'll have several committees, and Dr. Robertson spoke to a new safety committee that we want to develop, and so Ms. Jones and I will get together in the next few days and assign those chair positions. Let us know, where your interests are, and Ms. Jones and I will have that conversation and get that done right away, because we got a lot of work to do. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just put on the radar, we probably need to have a facilities committee meeting
Right away.
very soon.
That's right.
And safety meeting very soon.
Okay.
So,
Right, okay. So just quick, so we can get those chair positions in place, and we can start that process. Okay, with that being said, I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Move to approve?
Mr. Chair. I'd like to remove something from the agenda.
Okay, do we need to, just following rules of order here,
The way
We
it start,
can-
yeah, go ahead.
can we go ahead and remove an item, or do we need to get,
If it's his, he can pull it, and I think that's what he was gonna do.
Okay.
But
okay, go, Mr. Connor, go ahead. I just want to make sure I'm not messing up here. Go ahead.
I would like to, so, Scott, let me make sure, I thought I checked with you, I don't need to make a motion, I simply need to
No.
pull an item.
since it's yours, if you wanna pull it, you can pull it.
Okay, so I just quickly want to say that I made a note real quick because we had 3 speakers that said something almost to the effect of this. And so I'd like to pull my resolution, and I'd like to note a couple of things that were said that I think are part of the reasons that it needs to be pulled, and it's a good reason. So Ms. Reed mentioned an abstract before it. I wish that Dr. Robertson's explanation of the resolution and the situation at hand could have been included in a video of him saying exactly what he did, because I think it would have answered a lot of questions to Ms. Carmody, understanding of the facts of the nature and where we stand with it and what the actual language was. Because trust me when I say I definitely recognize the legalese is not the easiest thing to immediately understand. And then the last gentleman, and forgive me, sir, Gregory, I'm going to absolutely do your name a terrible disservice of trying to say your last name again, but transparency. So as your newly elected legislative chair, I'm going to hold the town hall, an open meeting, so that we can discuss the resolution and see ways that we can make it correct for both people. Because at the end of the day, I have 4 daughters in Hamilton County Schools, and I made a promise to keep those 4 daughters and our students safe. And that's what my job is, and that's what I want to do every night when I go to bed. So know that what I bring to this board is in the utmost intention of safety of children and educators. So I'm going to do my due diligence to listen and get to the right aspects there. So without further ado, I'd like to pull my resolution and offer it for a town hall, hopefully on October 7th before our October 10th meeting.
Okay, so you're speaking to item 8E1. Is that correct, I think? So that item will be struck. So now, with that item being struck, we'll entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay? Have a light on here, Ms. Schaefer?
Thank you. In the light of transparency, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to first discuss how this resolution came about to the board. Mr. Chairman,
Once it's pulled, I don't think you can discuss that unless
You'll have to wait till the 10th.
Tell me, Scott.
it was on the agenda to be discussed.
Pleasure of the chair, I guess, Mr. Chairman.
It's been pulled, right?
Yeah, it's pulled, pleasure of the chair.
Okay, so that item's been pulled, so obviously we're not gonna vote on it tonight. And I think Mr. Connor is offering another meeting to have that conversation.
Yes, sir. An open meeting, a town hall, if you will, because it would not be a committee meeting. It would be for public input and discussion on it.
Okay. I would think, Ms. Schaefer, that'd probably be the appropriate time to have that conversation, okay?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So I've got a motion and second, no other lights. So, Mr. Steve, roll call.
On the motion to approve the agenda, Mrs. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Groan,
Yes, I just have a few clarifying questions on a couple of things. I could get with you on that. I forgot to send you the email.
Mrs. Haddon,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. Okay, so Mr. David from the STEM School, are you here? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Would you please join me in our Pledge of Allegiance? Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chairman Smith, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Robertson, good evening. My name is Jim David. I'm the principal at our STEM school, and thank you for letting me share a few moments with you in our meditation. I want to focus on the word that we ended our pledge with, which was all. It's a word that resonates a lot in this district. You see it here, all children. We think about all of our students, all of our public schools. We think of all of our educators and all of our families. Y'all have a tough job, and I want to say thank you. Thank you for doing that. We also have collective commitments, which you all are going to be wrestling with and thinking about all those families and all those kids and all those schools. And another way of saying all is every, and all 5 of those are all. So in that spirit, I want to tell you about one of our schools, which is STEM School. STEM School has a very unique lottery process that I don't know if you are familiar with, which is we actually draw students from every single board zone. So every member here, we actually have families. And if you can imagine what it's like, you all represent your area, but what would it look like if you have students from every single area all coming together? And I heard through the grapevine that many of you are itching to get into schools. So in the spirit of all, in the spirit of itching to get into schools, I wanted to give you an opportunity to come see a place that has all and has families represented from every board. So I want to give you all a personal invitation from the STEM School to come see all.
Thank you. I'll be there. Yes.
So I just want to publicly say to Mr. David, you guys are aware of the situation on the campus of Chattanooga State a couple weeks ago. STEM School is on that campus, which many people don't know. And the way that his faculty and staff handled that situation, kept students safe, was incredible. And I think it's a direct reflection of his leadership, the way that they did it. And just wanted to publicly say thank you to him and to his faculty and staff, as well as Collegiate High, all the other people we had on that campus.
Okay. He's right there. You can thank him. Thank you, Mr. David.
I have, but it's better when it's, you know,
Thank
on
you,
YouTube.
Mr. David.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Schaefer, you're still lit up? Okay, there you go. Okay. Okay, our disclaimer, for those of you that are new, you know, it speaks for itself, but if it does not apply, you just simply let us know that it does not apply. So we'll start down here to my right with Mr. Grom.
Does not apply.
Does not apply.
Does not apply. I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget policies, et cetera, may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
Does not apply.
Does not apply?
Does not apply.
Does not apply.
Does not apply. Does not apply.
Well, that's interesting.
I'm used to being the only. I'm the only child.
You're the only child.
I mean, I'm used to this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda. And again, just for a point of clarification, if there's an item, our consent agenda covers all the way down to business matters, which is number 7 there. So anything in between, if there's anything there you want to pull and discuss, you can do that. This will be the time to do that. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion? Any second?
Second.
Okay. Any items to be pulled?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just have a question about 7A1A.
That would be under administrative items,
Oh,
Mr. Grown.
I'm
So
sorry.
we will get to that. So Ms. Jones, or did you have?
No, I had something for a minute.
Okay, all right. So no items to be pulled?
No, I'm on there.
You're not on here. And that, okay,
Oh, it's showing me as Jones.
okay. Mr. King, you have an item to be pulled?
I guess, or we can just talk beforehand.
Well, if,
All right, I'd like to pull, D1, stellar therapy. And then the E1 through E7. Just to get some clarification on some of these.
now, I'm not, I'm not.
It's under, these are all under the bids and contracts.
So you pull in one,
Okay. You said E1?
Well, those might be under the,
so he's pulling, he's
Oh,
pulling
those are all on decision ed.
6
yeah, they're all under,
D1. So he's pulling 6D1, item D1, looks like
D1, yes.
Well, stellar is D1.
stellar. And then and then you're pulling 6D1, item E1.
Yes, item E1 through E7, decision ed and sole services.
E1 through E7?
Yes. Just,
Those exhibits all go with that one bid.
right, they're all
Gotcha, okay.
together.
Okay, any other items to be pulled? Okay, roll call, Mr. Steve?
Mrs. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Groan,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes,
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. So item 6D1. Mr. King?
yeah, I know we've been working with stellar therapy and that, this one actually included something I hadn't seen before, and maybe it's been in there and I just didn't notice it. I knew we provided services to private schools, that the state pays for that. This time it also has homeschool included in it, and that's always been there?
Yeah.
Okay, the one I looked back on it, I didn't see it listed there, so. And I know it's a ballpark figure, it gives a range 47 to 929. When do we know that? Roughly, what time of year do we get to find out what that final cost for those services are?
I mean, it would be towards the end of the year. It's not, I mean, we can look at it month by month and pull it in if you want an update.
So
We
we'll
can
have that
certainly give that to you.
by the time we're ready to work on budget for
Oh,
next
yeah.
year.
Yeah.
All right. And then the other one, the E1 through E7, I just needed a kind of an explanation on, I know there are data housing, but I was just wanting an explanation on it of
Yeah.
what the benefits are and,
Sure. So Decision Ed is I'll try again. Decision Ed is the vendor that we use for our data warehouse, right? So data comes from multiple places. The warehouse allows it to pull us into one place. From there, we have actually some custom reports, some pre-made reports, as well as that's where we put our dashboards. So we have a school level dashboard, a classroom level dashboard that helps visualize the data coming in from multiple sources to make decisions in the classroom or at the school level.
and what was I remember Decision Ed, but
Yeah.
Sole Services, I don't remember from previously. So
Oh.
is that just in the last year or two?
I think that's just a clarification. So this is a sole source purchase, meaning no one else offers to be able to do Decision Ed's work. We would have to change vendors. And so that's the documentation that this is a sole source vendor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right, thank you very much. That's what I just needed clarification on that.
perfect.
Okay, anything else?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Groen?
may I speak to decision ed?
Speak to what, Mr. Groen?
To this software database?
Decision Ed.
Yeah, just for clarification.
Okay, go ahead.
For the new board members and even the old board members. Through conversations over a pretty long period of time with the superintendent and and Mrs. Moody, the school board has access to Decision Ed. So current members should have received messaging from Shannon, and new board members can message her and ask for this access. It does not include student names, nor does it include their individual identification numbers, but it allows you to look through this amazing database of information. So I initially questioned this very first month when I took office and wanting to know what it was. And graciously, the superintendent has allowed me to occupy several hours of Shannon's time to go through this. And let me tell you, it's talk about drinking from a fire hose. You got one in both ears and in your nose and in your mouth. It's an amazing way that we can look three-dimensionally at different aspects of effectiveness of our schools, or not.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grom. Okay, so we need a motion to approve item 6D1.
So moved.
Second.
So I missed the motion.
To approve
To approve.
6D1 that was pulled.
Any second?
Who was
I
the second?
seconded it.
Okay,
Thank you.
so roll call, Mr. Steve.
Mrs. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Groan,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. Motion to approve 6D1E, 1 through 7. Need a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
No lights, no discussion, okay? Roll call, Mr. Steve.
Mrs. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Groan,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. So it takes us down to administrative business matters, consideration of a new job classification. I don't see Dr. Brown, so I get, who's going to speak to this? Okay, thank you, Dr. Robertson.
Yeah, you've got two job descriptions here, and they're two separate items. One you're going to see on a regular basis. That is the one about the Board and Public Information Officer. As we update job descriptions, we're going to always bring those to you for approval. So this is essentially a rewriting of the job description for the Board Secretary, which Mr. Dreamus has filled. It is not a new position. It is simply a job description to match what he is doing. The first one, the Workplace Readiness Specialist, is a new job, and it is a new seat. You won't see this very often, but this is a grant-funded position that is working specifically with our special ed students on transition from K through 12 to work. We feel like this is a gap that we have with assisting our students with disabilities, so that when they leave K through 12, we want them to go on to do bigger things and towards gainful employment. So one is a new job, the new seat. Second one is a reclassification of a job description of an existing job.
Dr. Robertson, on the new position, how is that funded?
It's a grant-funded position, and like all grant-funded positions, when the grant runs out, you're either going to have to find a way to replace an existing seat with it or do away with that job. We always look at these to see how it's working. What I will again say about it is, for our students with disabilities that are going, many of them going until age 21 or even a little bit beyond with us, ultimately we want to make sure that we're helping them transition to adulthood, and that's what this job will help us do.
Okay. Several lights here. Ms. Jones?
So I had a question about the Workplace Readiness Specialist. How long is the grant for?
I do not know that off the top of my head.
It's recurring is what Dr. Evans told me, but I do not have the Just curious about that, because I do feel like this is a very needed position. I can speak from particularly Brainerd High School, where we have a lot of our students that when they graduate, I know, I was gonna call her whole name, Miss Lattimore works a lot, works heavily with them to try to get students placed. She's done that for years, but I do think, that there's opportunity for her to have the support. I mean, she's just doing that as a teacher, but I think having somebody in that place to do that and actually kind of help connect them would be a great thing, because after graduation, you often see them just throughout the community, but wonder like what are they doing or how are they able to progress. So given it is a grant position, I do think it's something as the board we need to. The reason why I was asking about the time length is because I think whenever that is up, that is something in that budget year when the grant is up, we need to look at staffing as a line item, because clearly, I mean, even the conversation today about the additional supports of coming into the classroom, I mean, things are just different with our students, and the needs are exceptional in a variety of ways. And so we do need to be sure that we're ensuring that all children are thriving in what that looks like in their post-secondary life. So I guess if you all could find out when that.
So Dr. Parker just looked at the clarification. It's baked into IDEA,
Okay.
and it is recurring.
Okay.
So it'll be a part of our continuing IDEA.
Okay, so that's great. Okay. Very necessary position.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Haddon?
Yes, that answered one of my question, but my comment was, as a former exceptional education teacher, that was always one piece in the IEP where it was really vague and we didn't have a lot of guidance. And so considering it's grant funded, I see it really as being a useful position in helping the legal aspects as well of writing the IEPs.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Graham?
Dr. Roberts?
Yes, sir.
In terms of how many positions will this create for
It's one.
Just one?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Schaefer?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak to the Board and Public Information Officer position.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I understand the board secretary part of this job description. However, it's the public information officer that concerns me. The board needs free flowing access to information. And I believe that we've heard from our public tonight that they want free and public access to information. My concern is that this creates a buffer between the public and the board, between the public and our superintendent. We are reviewing the superintendent's job duties description, and in there it says that he is to be the media spokesperson. But this job description creates for someone else to be a media spokesperson. That's concerning to me, hearing what we've heard tonight from the public. I also understand that this person would be responsible to the superintendent, and it would kind of blur the lines where the person, Ms. Ford, who had this position before, was directly to the board. I believe that the board needs that same separation. They need their own individual to request information from, and this muddies the waters a little bit too much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Schaefer. You want to speak to that, Dr. Robertson?
I do. Appreciate comments, and we spoke about this conversation earlier, and I clarified, obviously I will continue to work with the media as needed. What the public information officer is really speaking to is freedom of information request, emergency communications, things of that nature. To speak specifically about the role of the board secretary, and Mr. Bennett, I'll ask you to correct me if I'm wrong here, but legally I am the board secretary, right? And I delegate that to this position. That role, it doesn't change between how it was dealt with previously in terms of like the relationship with this new job description between Steve and this board. So I just want to clarify that and make sure as always, and we're working with new board, I mean, we're gonna run into things where maybe something's not happening, to Mr. Groan's earlier point. That took a minute to get to where we had access, but we worked through it, and so, part of a healthy board superintendent relationship is having those conversations when, you know, if something that I'm asking Mr. Duremus to do isn't meeting the expectations of a board member, we have that conversation and we fix it. So I'm committed to doing that and just want to say it publicly.
Okay. There's some lights on. I'm not sure if these are new lights or if you had it turned off before. So, Mr. King? Okay, Ms. Jones, you're still on too.
So I think Mr. King, because he's sitting there, that when he lights, it's me, because I'm supposed to be over there, but I'll be over there.
Okay, okay.
And then I'm lighting for him.
Okay, okay.
But I did want to say, to clarify, and I feel some kind of way about what I'm about to say, so just work with me. As now, I guess, the veteran member of the board,
You are the oldest.
I have lived through three board secretaries, Miss Ann Bates, Miss Sherry Ford, and now Mr. Steve Duremus. And I do want to clarify, just for my new peers on the board, and even for the public, once again, like I said, because I know that the attendance at board meetings shifts every year. Our board secretary is just like what Dr. Robertson said, a delegated role that he delegates out. And the board secretary honestly has never reported to us. I've always wondered who he or she reported to. Like, this really clarified it for me after 10 years, like, oh, this is what happens here. Because going to school board academies where we learn about board and superintendent relations, that's why I learned about the role, was at board and superintendent relations, which is an academy that you can attend through TSBA. But there's several others that, board excellence, some other things that kind of teach you how those roles go. And you all will have the experience of doing those because they teach you a lot about the functionality and really making sure that your board is operating as it should be to TSBA standards. And I would like to actually applaud Dr. Robertson and his team, or whoever helped him come up with this job description, because it actually does align to what TSBA told us a couple of years ago, which is, I think, I realized that Ben, I think, went, and Jill that year went, and Joe went that year, and we were like, oh, that's how that works, because I always wondered who the board secretary reported to. So I do think this is a very necessary position, and it actually ties the two together, I think, better, because we had a communications officer, we had a board secretary, we had a superintendent, we had all this, and it was always like, well, who is doing what? But I think this actually does define who does what, how they do it, and what that does in communication to us. So I just wanted to share that for clarity, because this actually does align and streamline that role better for the benefits to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Mr. Groen?
So, just clarify for us, Mr. Duremus is actually going to wear two hats now. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I want to be clear, though. He is carrying over some duties that he was previously responsible for. And in fact, like, not to feel like we're bringing up Ms. Ford and she's not here, but Ms. Ford, when she stepped into the role of board secretary, came from IT and actually carried over some duties from there as well that people just forgot that she was doing. Like, she was handling school messenger, handling our key fobs and some other IT responsibilities. So it's similar to what happened then. In my opinion, like, this role sets up very nicely to deal with what I've been saying are operational communications, the communications that go out with media releases, Freedom of Information Acts, things like that. And so the decision was made because of the skill set Mr. Duremus has, that this is really, I think, a tailor-made job for his skill set that will serve both the board well, the public well, and administration.
Well, let me just comment that you're aware of what our policy says is the responsibility of our communications department. Is that, or would you like me?
I'm not sure what you'll have to read it to me.
Well, it primarily is our.
What policy is it?
I'm sorry, I would have to look it up and get with you.
Sorry,
But The duties of the communications department is to promote positive information on what good is happening in our schools to the public. My concern is kind of similar to Ms. Schaefer's. It appears, I just want you to consider, it appears that since there's been such a close relationship with you and Mr. Doremus because of his position as a PIO, putting him in both positions, having him wear both hats, might appear to be like there is no degree of separation between his role as our assistant and his role as the public information officer. That's troubling to me.
So I think there's two parts, right? The point about communications and promoting positive, that responsibility, that is falling with what is strategic communications that now reports to Ms. Moody, right? And so we've separated that piece of the work that Steve was doing previously, and that department's reporting to Ms. Moody. To the question about the close relationship that Steve and I have, I don't think that that's like not unknown. I mean, I've worked with him very closely for 2.5 years. I'm not going to put someone in this position that I'm not confident can do the job. And I'm confident not only in the work that he's done here in Hamilton County, but previously for a decade serving in this exact role for another district in Tennessee, and the close work that he's done with TSBA. So like his skill set, I mean, we could post it and put it out there, and I just don't think you're gonna find anyone that has the past experience of not only knowing how to do the public information officer and also knowing what it takes to be a great school board secretary. It's just a unique skill set that he has, and so I understand the perception. But again, I will say, ultimately, this position was supposed to be very directly reporting to me, and that's how it's set in state law. And so this is clarifying it. I'll go back to what I said originally to Ms. Schaefer's comment. Part of us working together is if something is not working well, like we've got to discuss it and figure out how to move forward with it. So as I think you and I have figured out over 2 years, like we've worked through some pretty significant differences on things, and for the most part, not always, for the most part, gotten to a place of resolution. So I'm
In some
committed
things,
to that.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the clarification.
I think it's important to point out too, one thing that I've appreciated, I don't know that I've ever read something somewhere that I didn't first hear about it from you. So before you, our public information person goes public with something, you've communicated that to us. Expect ABC to come out a few hours from now. So I would expect that's going to continue. So, Mr. King?
Yes. I'd like to let the new board members know and remind the old board members, we kind of put this on ourselves because as Mr. Smith first said when the new position of the reading specialist came out, first question was, how's that going to be paid? And we echoed an opinion through the last board that we were not going to be adding new positions to central office unless there was a funding available for that outside our budget. So this position is not a new position, it is a joined one, and that was at our request to keep the positions in-house.
Ms. Jones?
Oh,
No? Okay.
that's him.
Yeah, it's still, okay.
I'm Mr. King tonight. That's Mr. King.
Ms. Thomas?
I'm not sure, my question is, I guess it's to some of the board members, is that will we not want the person that's gonna be doing our communication or even working with the board to have a good relationship with the superintendent? I'm not so sure in Jody's comment, I don't see a conflict in that, because I think anybody that's gonna work hand in hand, of course, we all know the superintendent is the speaker of whatever information goes out and has to be approved. So I guess that was my question that I kind of wrote down, would we not want that? And especially if it's not creating, just enhancing a job description.
Okay. Ms. Haddon?
Yeah, I just want to say, of course, I'm new here, but so far my interactions and help from Mr. Doremus has been excellent. I mean, you've been really on top of it and informative and, you know, really helped us out. And I also think maybe some of the issues, you know, we're bringing up, maybe we can bring up circumstances as they arise, if any conflict then, you know, arises at all, we can address those at the time and try to make any corrections or changes as needed.
Okay.
Real quick, just clarity too. So, as chairman, Mr. Smith always speaks on behalf of the board as the chair. Like, after we come to the decision, typically the chairperson is the person who speaks for the board. Dr. Robertson is the person as director of schools, interchangeably superintendent, because they interchanging names now, speaks for the district. And so I once again just want to clarify that, because I don't see a conflict there either, because they have to have any chair will have plenty of conversations with the director of school, because they are the executive, committee of the district. So like, they have conversations sometimes, and there's already, depending on timing and things, Joe or Jonathan or whomever, Mr. Ricks has been chair, will have had to sign something or move forward because they had to make an executive decision. And so I don't think there's a conflict, because they have to work together to do that. And Steve ultimately, whether he was communications officer or board secretary, because when we had just board secretaries separate, they were the one disseminating information to the media, like, they have all the packets over here and pass them out. I mean, if you just kind of watch the motions of it, it just allows one person to do that. Steve was doing the work, Sherry got passed it out, it was just a whole lot. I think it's one person doing it makes a lot of sense. But just wanting to separate that to make sure that people understand the chair speaks for the board, the superintendent or director of schools speaks for the district.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jones. So I have no more lights, so we'll need to approve these one at a time. So I would entertain a motion to approve workplace readiness specialist. Move to approve?
So moved.
Second.
So I've got a motion and a second. So, Mr. Steve, roll call.
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Groan?
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Smith?
Yes. So entertain a motion to approve Board and Public Information Officer.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Steve.
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Groan?
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer?
No.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Smith?
Yes.
10 in favor, 1 opposed, Mr. Chairman.
Takes us down to board matters. Consideration of ESSER 3 grant application. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I do have a light, Ms. Jones, or that'd be Mr. King.
Ms. King. So I would like to extend my gratitude that the money that was lost a couple years ago for Central's bleachers is now back in the ARPA money. So hopefully before the year is over, they'll have bleachers out there and can run track meets.
Okay. So roll call, Mr. Steve.
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Groan?
Yes.
Mrs. Hadden,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. Takes us down to operations, consideration of TDOT Westview Land Acquisition. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I've got a couple of lights here, so, Mr. King?
Yeah, I was just curious, so the land acquisition, where will that go back into county commission, or will capital projects, or?
No, it'll go to capital projects.
Capital projects, all right.
And, I mean, there's been already some preliminary discussions of, some projects in District 7 that money could support. It's essentially a strip of land in front of Westview Elementary to expand, East Brainerd Road. And so typically, when stuff like this happens, it's been previous practice of the board that especially a dollar amount like this would support schools in that district, so.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Groen?
I was actually city council of East Brainerd when phase 1 of this widening project took place. What a mess it was. And this is now phase 2, which is supposed to have already been completed 2 years ago. And I'm sure that the residents out in East Hamilton are going to be very happy when this is done. Hopefully we need the rain, but we don't need the rain like we had under phase 1.
Thank you, Mr. Groen. Ms. Schaefer?
Well, as one of those residents who already deals with the insane traffic, I would just wanted to say, seeing some of the offers for some other lands near, that we got a good offer.
Okay. Just for public consumption, tell us that amount again.
It is $271,469. It's the green area is about an acre. It's a little over an acre, the whole
Okay.
space.
And then to
It's
repeat,
essentially the strip right in
Right.
front that goes along, what would be the east side of East Brainerd Road as you're going south, right in front of Westview and right before Ooltewah-Ringgold Road.
okay. Mr. Connell?
Sorry, I just thought it might be cool to add a little note that people have talked a little bit about transparency. So if you do go to our website, you can pull up our agenda, and it will not only have this item, but you can click further and see these maps in color of the space that's being sold, the dollar amounts, and all the information.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. Ms. Schaefer?
Part of that purchase price is the new electronic sign, so that has to be replaced. Just wanted to let the board know that it was a brand new 1-year-old electronic sign bought by the PTO, and that's part of this.
Okay. Okay, thank you. No more lights. Mr. Steve, roll call.
Mrs. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Groen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hadden,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas, Chairman Smith.
Yes. Consideration of budget transfer from county government for capital projects. Motion to approve.
Move to approve, we taking it. Second.
We have a light here. Mr. Daugherty?
I did just want to have a quick question, and obviously we're all excited about these expenses because they're much needed. I do want to speak to anybody in the audience, and really anybody watching now, and obviously Jess Robertson. I'm glad Mr. Sharp's here as well, because I know he's spearheading this. So I live in District 2. Thrasher Elementary is one of the main schools in that district. And for anybody not familiar with Thrasher 2, it's built on a mountain. So by the very nature of it, it's sloping. And that has caused some challenges, many challenges, building, but most primarily, or most recently I should say, is within the playground. I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten over the last 2 weeks about parents that a child had an injury, which is obviously tough. So my question is, this is a large capital expense. I think it's the second most on this, for a much needed cause, right? It's important that we provide opportunities for all kids to enjoy it. I know the parent of the child that's helping push this through. My question is, when we look at the bigger picture here within this money, is there an opportunity to ensure, and this may be a question for Mr. Sharp, but ensure that we're creating a suitable playground, obviously for the child that needs it most, but really taking advantage of this opportunity from a funding perspective, ensuring that we're building it for every kid?
You want me to do it? Yeah, I think so. I know you and I have talked a little bit about my belief of long-term down the road, potential expansions at Thrasher. When I say this, I'm talking like 15, 10, 5 years, like down the road. And I think that we do have an opportunity to think about what that might look like and where this playground would go and really do it the right way. It is a large expense. What I will say though is playgrounds across the district, especially throughout the pandemic, we took a lot of advantage of grants and other funding that was available, and a number of playgrounds across this district have been updated significantly. Red Bank Elementary in your district, that playground is, you've probably seen it and thought, wow, it's nice. And so this is an extension, I see it, of that project. It is addressing the ADA things, but it's also trying to create, what is a suitable outdoor playing area. It is, in my opinion, one of the more challenging sites for an elementary playground.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Black?
This question's for Dr. Sharp. I see on here the Howard 600-ton chiller. I know we've had several conversations about the HVAC issues at Howard and the need for like a total system replacement. Is this something that is going to start that process? I just want some clarification for the public. Is this going to address some of the main issues that we're seeing of inconsistency within the building?
It will. It will provide a significant piece of that work. It certainly gets us started with that work. When you look at the entire facility, it's going to be much more than just one large chiller. But this is a significant piece of equipment that will provide us an upgrade, definitely.
I know that there's a specific place in the building at Howard High School that is like it's too hot in the summer and it's too cold in the winter. Is this addressing that specific area?
That'll help with, that's part of that. There's
Okay.
some other work we're doing over there too with some insulated doors and things of that nature. That combination of all of that, we hope will bring some relief to that part of the building. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, no more lights. Mr. Steve?
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Groan?
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Keene?
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Smith?
Yes. Consideration of Howard School baseball and softball lights. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
No lights? Roll call?
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Groan?
Yes, this should have been done years ago.
Mrs. Haddon?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Keene?
Yes, and I hope all the fields will eventually get lights.
I hope all the schools get some fields. Cause I got a new high school coming up in Tyner and it's borrowing a field from the city.
That's what we agreed to.
I know, but I'm just saying. And Brainerd's coming up and it needs softball and baseball fields with lights
Mrs. Schaefer?
Yes.
and tracks. The track needs lights too at Brainerd.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes, I said yes, I'm sorry.
Chairman Smith?
Yes. Consideration of joining class action lawsuit for insulin fund recovery. Dr. Brown's not here, so maybe, Mr. Bennett, could you just kind of explain to us what this is about?
Sure. So this particular firm has been approaching county governments around the state. It started with the fentanyl litigation, and they were actually very instrumental in getting some recoveries for a lot of the county governments. Somewhere in the course of investigating the fentanyl litigation, they became aware that a lot of the school systems that have self-funded health plans have been, in their belief, overcharged for insulin costs by a substantial amount of money. We shared with this firm our insulin costs going back several years, and they have assumed that we probably could recover in excess of $1 million. There are a number of districts that have already joined in this. It is a class action, and one of the things about class actions, you tend to get more money the sooner you jump into the suit than later. So I think to say that we could recover $1 million is optimistic, but it's certainly possible. The lead attorney for Tennessee met with Ms. Murray and me several months ago, and looked at the numbers. This doesn't cost us anything to jump into the litigation. I'm not going to tell you that there's money to be found under a rock. Certainly we're hopeful, but it doesn't cost us to pursue this.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve this consideration.
Motion
move.
to approve.
Have a
I'll
motion? Have a second? No lights? Roll call, Mr. Steve?
Mrs. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Groan,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddon,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Slater,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. So we have some first reads there tonight, so we don't vote on these since they're first reads. And then we'll be, Ms. Jones and I'll be getting somebody to chair that committee, and we'll be having a policy committee real soon. So unless I've missed something, it takes us down to our events and announcements that are there for you. September 25th, annual Life Curriculum Forum. That'll happen right here in the boardroom. And then Thursday, October the 10th, will be our next board meeting. And then October 14th through the 18th, our fall break. Everybody's excited about that, I know. Okay. Any other items, questions, comments? Okay. We
Mr.
stand
Chairman,
adjourned.
I'm sorry, I need to point this out publicly.
Okay.
So you should have gotten, or you will be getting, new business cards, and you're gonna notice that the address has actually changed. So this has been in progress for a while. This road was, recently named after, Claude Ramsey, who's truly instrumental figure in our community.
No question.
And so Hickory Valley Road now is Claude Ramsey Parkway. And so our address has officially started to be changed. So you'll start to see us, probably won't get everything changed. We're not going to throw out letterhead and things like that we've already got, but you'll start to see that change on things as it comes out, that the new address is 3074 Claude Ramsey Parkway.
Okay, thank you. What a great man. What a great man he was. Okay. Okay, we stand adjourned.